Petrol price goes up again as a report indicates that Dangote refinery has again increased petrol price to 1,175 naira per litre. And Lagos State is warning about impending flood, asking residents to be wary of the flood waters. Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Shonwa Kimale right here for you in Abuja. There is a warning coming from Lagos State government and it's about what could be a very heavy rainfall and flash flooding as the rainy season approaches. The State Commissioner for Environment and Water Resources, Mr. Tokunbo Wahab, at a press conference earlier today, says that the seasonal climate prediction and its social-economic implication for the state will mean that Lagos residents will need to be careful. Mr. Wahab says that the forecast indicates an early to normal onset of the rainy season, a normal to late cessation, and normal to above normal rainfall, with temperatures likely to be above normal in most parts of the state between March and May. And of course, he's listed a few areas in the state that residents need to be careful.
Specifically, Ikeja is expected to have an onset date of 31st day of March 2026 and cessation date of 2nd December and an annual amount of 1,932 mm. The average total rainfall amount of 1,965 mm is expected in Lagos State in year 2026. Lagos State is expected to also experience above normal rainfall, and this is also expected for the neighboring Ogun states. Therefore, the low-lying areas of Agility, Agboyi, Itowolu, and Ajegunle communities in Lagos State are being closely monitored with respect to the likelihood of Ogun River flooding as well as other river basins in the state.
There's those who are living in Lagos, so not only peculiar to Lagos, but Lagos is now warning. So if you are along the floodplains, you need to take precautionary measures, please, so that we can all stay alive. Well, there's so much to talk about tonight, and my guest is one man that I don't agree with most oftentimes. Yes, a brilliant man, but then I disagree with his political position most of the times. He's my guest tonight. It might come into an argument, but I respect him for his brilliance and his intelligence. But before we get into our conversation tonight, let me serve you with some of your political roundup stories.
The Senate leadership is expected to hold a high-level meeting with officials from the International Monetary Fund to discuss the country's economic outlook and ongoing reform programs under the administration of President Bola Tinubu. The engagement forms part of the IMF's Article 4 consultation with Nigeria for routine assessment of the country's economic policies and financial stability. The planned interaction is expected to give lawmakers deeper insight into the government's economic management framework and explore the potential support the global financial institution could provide for the federal government's sweeping economic reforms. The development, disclosed by the Deputy President of the Senate, Barau Jibrin, is a consultation exercise to run from March 4 to March 17, 2026. A federal high court in Abuja has fixed April 1 for the fresh arraignment of former Jigawa State Governor over an alleged 1.35 billion naira fraud case filed by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Lamido is expected to appear alongside his two sons, Aminu and Mustafa Lamido, who are accused of participating in the alleged fraud through fictitious contract awards linked to their companies. The case, which began in 2015, was revived after the Supreme Court in January 2026 ruled that Lamido and the other defendants had a case to answer and ordered the trial to continue at the Federal High Court. Meanwhile, former presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party, SDP, Mr. Adewale Adebayo, is calling for stronger democratic participation, unity and respect for electoral processes as Nigeria Nigeria prepares for the 2027 elections. Speaking at an iftar breaking affairs with political leaders in Abuja, Mr. Adebayo stressed the importance of unity, religious tolerance, and constructive political engagement in strengthening Nigeria's democracy. He notes that the spiritual significance of Ramadan, particularly the emphasis on humility and accountability, should guide the conduct of political leaders and public officials. Lastly, the chairman of the National Convention Security Committee of the All Progressives Congress and Minister of Defense, General Christopher Musa, is asking members of the committee to be proactive in placing security measures ahead of the party's convention. Addressing members of the committee at the inaugural meeting, General Musa stressed the need for members to be guided by professionalism, discipline, and mutual respect in engagement with one another and with other institutions. He adds that the convention must reflect the high standards of organization and security befitting a ruling party and a responsible national political institution.
Thanks so much, everyone, for staying with us. There you have it. You've been served with your political roundup stories. So we get in some information and reports that Dangote Petroleum Refinery may have revised the petrol price for, to about 1,175 naira per liter because of some reasons due to global price and the pressure on the commodity globally. The refinery previously lowered the ex-depot price of premium motor-sprayed petrol by 100 naira, bringing it to 1,075 naira per liter on the 10th of March, which is on Tuesday, and reduced from the earlier price of 1,175 naira per liter. But the poor operators who had started selling at an average price of 1,100 naira per liter immediately paused the sale transaction due to the refinery's increase in price. But reports are now indicating that the refinery may have hiked the price again to 1,175 naira per liter. Of course, global energy markets are on the edge as oil prices are surging past the $100 per mark, triggered by escalating tensions in the Middle East and fresh attacks targeting energy infrastructure and shipping routes across the Persian Gulf. The international benchmark Brent crude briefly climbed above $101 per liter as fears mount over disruptions to global supply. And a lot of people are now saying the situation could worsen following retaliatory strikes by Iran and renewed military pressure involving the United States and Israel. And I'll be giving you some insight into what is happening, the surge, the global impact on oil prices, the impact on local economy, because these will drive a lot of things. Inflation will be impacted, food prices will be impacted, transportation prices will be impacted. But again, if we're selling crude as a nation that produces crude as part of our mainstay of the economy, it means one thing, more earnings. But then what is the impact on microeconomy if there is a major impact on macro side of the economy? But tonight I have a guest who, by all means, very brilliant man, a businessman, a federal lawmaker, now an ambassador designate. He's the United Nations Permanent Representative designate, as appointed by President Bola Tinubu. Senator Jimoh Ibrahim is my guest tonight on the program. And specifically, his profile just naturally meets up some of our conversation because of his experience. And I got to discover that he's one of 3 Nigerians who has had PhD in war studies. He's got a modern PhD in modern studies at Buckingham University. And, you know, brilliant, but I don't agree with him most of the times because of his views, political views and economic views and the trajectory of the nation. But Ambassador designate and United Representative designate, congratulations is in order, I guess.
Thank you, Senator Jimoh Ibrahim. You want to say?
I mean, it's no longer news that you are United Nations Permanent Representative, and that is a big deal.
Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
And thank President Bola Tinubu for trying to get me out to do that job.
A lot of people know you as a senator. You wanted to be a governor. They know you as a businessman. as a lawyer, but so many people do not know that you are one of the most read Nigerians. You've got degree in Oxford, in Cambridge, in Buckingham. That's a lot.
And Harvard.
And Harvard.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Reading is my hobby. Reading is my habit. I'm from Ondo State, you know. So I got 9 degrees, and the 10th one I will start on the 18th of March, next week. Registration for Masters of Finance in private financial sector management, so the University of London. So we keep reading. The idea is to get information about what is happening and where do we go and how do we react. So if you take a degree in law, it guides you on business transactions. You take a degree on war, it helps you to look at when insurgency is going to happen. How do you prepare yourself to make sure that you overcome insurgency? You take a degree in mega projects, it tells you about project management, particularly at mega level, and whether those projects will succeed or not, and if they will not succeed. So it's you know, we are well diversified in terms of understanding what is happening. I also have a degree in international relations from London School of Economics. I think that is one of the best schools for international relations, a BSc, a bachelor degree at second class level. So obviously, is to let me understand what is happening at the international level in terms of peace distilments and then insurgencies and, of course, war, which you think is scaring you. And, you know, we're all part of it. And the engagement is quite interesting. And it's a bit challenging.
It's a very interesting time that you are now being appointed.
Yeah.
And I'm not, maybe your resume would have gotten to the president's table for him to have considered you for this particular position. I wasn't aware until when you were being screened and I got to see your profile and I was shocked. I thought I knew a bit of you. I know you as a shrewd businessman and a notorious lawyer at that. And those who do not agree with your business template of running business, those who will criticize you for such a thing. But because I'm a scholar myself, I love to read, and I've acquired a few degrees. So
let's get to the use of diplomatic language.
You are a shrewd businessman, I thank you. And so what really caught my attention, and I respect people who study wide and who try to attain some academic height. And kudos to someone like Dr. Kaede Fayemi, who's got a PhD in world studies. You are one of the 3 Nigerians that I know that has that degree. And Jeremiah, I guess.
Yeah, Jeremiah is still serving in the army. And he was my junior in
Buckingham.
In Buckingham, where we had the PhD in modern. Why he finished his dissertation on time. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, so he's still serving.
So let me use, tonight, I will use your world studies knowledge.
Okay.
For free. I'm not concerned about your Harvard degree or your Cambridge degree. I'll use your Buckingham experience. Now, it's interesting. Congratulations. And we're hoping that you're going to make Nigeria proud at the United Nations. Albeit a lot of people will think that the role of the United Nations in world peace and order is dwindling because Donald Trump has whittled down the powers and the impact or the influence of the United Nations. Are you worried about that?
Not at all. Exactly not so. You have to take it from the background of the United Nations. United Nations are more of liberalists. So the whole idea is let us cooperate and collaborate to distill an international order. So the trajectory, that's the trajectory of the United Nations from day one. So after the Second World War, countries decided to meet together in 1948, and then, of course, formed that charter, signed the charter, you know, that there will never be a war again, according to the preamble, and then we pursue peace, you know, subject to certain fundamentals, you know, that you expect that were right there. But at any point in time where a particular person runs the United Nations or runs American government, you have to know that the taxonomy and the practice of that person will surely distill to what you expect of the United Nations. So Donald Trump is a realist. I'm sure you know that. And to realists, they are interested in accumulation of power, you know, in the state of citizen. So they believe that crisis must surely engulf. It must happen. So therefore, they need power. They acquire power ahead of crisis. So, and they believe that, look, the currency of a realist is power. So obviously, power engagement is there. And when they get to power, get to government, they're interested in seeing, is there anybody causing disaffection among the geocentric system? So that we can actually show the person how powerful we are in bringing them down. So obviously speaking, it is not that the United Nations is not really performing or doesn't know what to do or is descending down. No. To the realists, let me say clearly, they believe that the United Nations, international organizations are epiphenomena. What do you mean by epiphenomena? Someone who doesn't have a mind of his own. So when they criticize and bullish the United Nations International Organization, they say, you don't have a mind of your own. Come on, go and sit down. You are Jimo representing Nigeria. You cannot say anything here unless you see President Ahmed Bola Tinubu. It is the mind of President Tinubu that you are going to say. You cannot say a mind of your own in the United Nations affairs. And ditto all of you who are UN permanent representatives. So obviously, if we are going to go back to import the mind of the government before we take decision in the United Nations, then they question what become of the United Nations. But that is not so. That is realist. Now, because we have to see this argument as a proper foundation. To the liberalists, they believe that they don't believe in power acquisition. So they are not going to run in accordance with power. Example of church is President Bola Tinubu. Whatever you can say about him, he doesn't believe in aggressiveness of power, to distill power. President Obasanjo likes power. President Buhari likes, maybe because of their military, praxis, the testimony that they have in their system. So those are power aggressors. Now, when you look at Donald Trump is a realist running a liberal American democracy. There's a conflict from day one. I think I said it here.
And his popularity is dwindling locally in America.
Whichever way you want to say it, the issue is that you wouldn't have comforts easily in the next 3 years of the President Trump because Donald Trump is running a liberal democracy, and he himself is a realist. You can't take the idea of realism from him, and the praxis and characteristics of realism cannot be taken away from Donald Trump. 45 years ago, he said, I wish I had a power as to bring down and release those people that were tracked down in Iran. 45 years ago. He's in power today. A realist will do that immediately that he got to power. He still remember his thought of 45 years ago. So, obviously, that is realist. Now, finally, let's look at the liberalists. The liberalists who are the foundation member of United Nations are saying that the only way to come out of, because international relations, it's anarchic. Anarchy, not in form of crisis, but there is no one to remit authority. There is no place where Nigeria can report Ghana, that Ghana is disturbing me, or you can report Togo, and they can take decision, and the police will arrest Togo and bring them to bear and take them to court easily. So all this, that's why we say international relations is anarchic, and to the extent that we cannot remit power to a specific person. So the United Nations is set up in a way that it can solve those crises when they arise. So we have the organic structure, the major structure, and the ICJ, the judiciary structure, in case there are problems. But don't forget, there are challenges like things like enforcement and all that, and voluntary membership issues. So what has happened is that liberalists believe that we must cooperate and collaborate to solve a particular problem. So if you have a threat from Iran, let's collaborate, let's cooperate, let's discuss it, let's have conferences, let's take decisions. But a realist doesn't believe in that. He's going to, send his antenna before he comes to Senate for approval. That is the characteristics of liberalism. But, and that's what you see in the international scene right now.
With your global geopolitics knowledge, is the world underestimating Iran?
Well, every country has its own peculiar situation and power. Like I said, Iran is not a democratic state also. So you see a situation now whereby the realists of United States, that's Donald Trump, having issues with the realist system of Iran. But again, Donald Trump presides over a liberalist democracy of America, which you cannot take away. So every country, you cannot underestimate any country.
And there is a pattern, though. There is a pattern, the similar pattern which Mr. Donald Trump used on Maduro.
Yes.
And he says, whoever going to take over from Maduro, I need to be I need to determine it. He's saying the same thing about Iran.
No. You see, the situation in Maduro case is quite different. Maduro was.
But I'm saying that as a diplomat, sorry, sir,
yes.
as a president of a democratic society like America,
yes.
you dictating, no matter what the crisis may be, dictating to say, I want to determine who becomes the leader of this country after resolving or after ending the crisis there. What do you make of that kind of pattern?
In Article 1 of the United Nations Charter, 6 nations are equal. Article 2.4 says no nation shall use force against another nation. That is the only way you can keep the peace of the geocentric system. Now, Article 2.7 says do not interfere in internal affairs of another country. These 2 articles were conveniently breached by Donald Trump. You know that.
In the case of Nigeria, he did that too?
Well, in the case of Nigeria, Nigeria is a signatory to 1948 Convention on Genocides and Terrorism. So if you sign that convention, it negates your sovereignty to the extent of solving security problem. In multilateralism, you problem that are above bilateral treaties go to multilateral level, and then you have to have what we call social capital network at geocentric level to solve that problem. So Nigeria, Donald Trump could come here to solve terrorism.
So you think it was right to have bombed parts of Sokoto State?
You see,
even if there was not 100% consent or agreement with the Nigerian military.
Okay, let me tell you this how it is. Nigeria is a signatory to Genocide Convention, Geneva Convention on Genocide of 1948. About the time that UN Convention Charter was also signed. What does that say? It says that if your terrorism travel across jurisdiction of another country, if an international relation were what we call the doctrine of responsibility to protect, that is ROTP2. So if a crisis occurs in your jurisdiction and you don't solve that problem, and it traveled to another jurisdiction, I don't actually need your consent at all to make sure.
Donald Trump was right to have dropped those bombs.
He could come.
And President Tinubu was also right to have intervened and helped out Benin Republic.
Yes, he could help Benin Republic.
In similar light.
Let me tell you, he could help Benin Republic if he understands that, if he knows that the crisis is traveling across the border. Understand what in international relations. If the peace of your system, your local system, is not threatening international peace, nobody will talk about it. Remember, Boko Haram, I wrote my PhD thesis on Boko Haram. Boko Haram, for 23 years, do you see anybody coming to intervene and helping Nigeria? Because Boko Haram hadn't traveled. The crisis of Boko Haram hasn't traveled. It has not traveled from Nigeria to other jurisdictions, except
our neighboring
Chad
has been
killed. And not immediately. In the first decade of Boko Haram, those crises don't travel to those countries. As it goes expanded, then of course it traveled to those countries. Now, if it goes beyond that to other countries, we have what we call responsibility to protect will be triggered by any country without notice to another country. That's the rules of engagement.
Now, I mean, as a UN permanent representative designate, and I'm not trying to draw you out now, but would Nigeria having a seat at the Security Council be your ultimate target?
I think President Tinubu made fantastic demand on this, and it's reiterated during the second assembly 2 years ago. The General Assembly, where he read a fantastic speech about demand for the Security Council seats. And when I was in the UN in January this year, at a parliamentary meeting, I reiterated the thesis of President Tinubu about the Security Council membership of Africa. Africa is demanding for 2 members of the Security Council. Isn't that is not too much at all? 53 countries, I'm paying about $8 million, annual fee every other year. You can imagine that, multiply the number of countries in Africa, and then there is need for us to have engagement. And that's why the Secretary General of the United Nations says that push it forward, and you get it. So when I resume, that is the first thing. That is one of the thesis handed over to me by Mr. President to ensure that this comes to reality. So the Vice President was very critical, and President of Ghana also retweeted President Tinubu's speech about the need to have membership of Security Council in Africa, particularly two seats given to us in Africa. As of today, I think Tanzania is the president of the Security Council, not membership. We're talking about not permanent membership. Member. Every member is member of the Security Council in an expanded membership zone, but they are, fundamental members that are there permanent forever. So we will look at this, but you see, when I get in, the first thing you have to do in the first 90 days of resumption is to study situation. You need to, actions must reflect situation. So situational diagnosis review is key to understand exactly where we are, where are we coming for, what do we need to do, what diplomacy do we need to employ, and of course, what the multilateral issues we're engaging. Understand the distinction between me and other ambassadors is the fact that I look at things at multilateral level, not at bilateral level. Bilateral level are domestic problems that are country to country, very common. But anything that is above those bilateral treaties and consign come to multilateralism, because you need more engagement of more countries in form of unity.
So you're a super ambassador.
I don't know about that, but I do know that ambassador
of multiple interests and jurisdictions.
I don't know about that, but I do know that ambassadors posted to United Nations are usually extraordinary and plenipotentiary ambassadors.
I don't doubt your capacity, and I just wish you well. I just hope that the manner in which you have engaged in some at the Senate level, when you have had engagement there, I hope that you'll be able to build and you are challenged and correct notions about Nigeria. I just hope that you'll be able to continue in that light and be able to push the interests of Nigeria. But what was the president thinking? You are already a political player in Nigeria, representing the not only Igbo Tako and the rest of your senatorial district in the National Assembly. So you prefer that kind of appointment, which sound to me more academic in that sense, than a more deeply political role. Was it pushed by you or the president identified?
Let me tell you, Sean, every appointment doesn't have to be triggered by money issue. It's not about money making. It's about helping your country. In a day and at this very particular time, things will be restructured at the United Nations. Nigeria must take position. And President Tinubu is interested in disseminating Nigeria as a zone of peace. He wants this country to be known as a zone of peace.
Is that what he told you?
Well, I can tell you
that. Has he briefed you?
It's about foreign.
Have you gotten briefing from him?
Let me tell you. This is about foreign policy. Nigeria, what is Nigeria foreign policy? Friends of all, enemy of none. So what does that tell you? It talks about peace. So when you look at it, Tinubu as a hegemonic leader, democratically in the Nigerian society, want peace. And peace is not the opposite of war. A war is not the opposite of peace.
But it is the absence of one.
War must happen, whether you like it. It's ingrained in every human being. 5 minutes a day, the war you must demonstrate how good you are.
But I'm just looking at you. I'm trying to read your mind, Senator. Just a moment. I'm trying to read your mind.
Yes.
So you prefer? Are you bored playing in the National Assembly?
How can I be bored? I'm chairman of Interparliamentary in the National Assembly. I represent this country in about 17, 18 countries in a year. I go around the global system to talk about the Renew Hope agenda of President Tinubu. I think Nigeria can achieve a lot in the United Nations, particularly in ensuring that we have our seat at the Security Council. We have played a lot of role in the UN, and it cannot be over. If you go to the UN headquarters, you see the impact of Nigeria, even pictorially. You can't find another Africa country except South Africa, where you have Mandela pictures and all that. Artifacts that Oni donated, that Sultan donated to the United Nations, are costly put are right there. So we cannot underplay this. And we don't want our sovereignty to be threatened by anybody. Nigeria is a sovereign state, I'm sure you know that. Although sovereignty might be hypocritical because there is no absolute sovereignty. No absolute. The United States of America is not absolute in terms of sovereignty. What do I mean by absolute sovereignty? That means that you can stop internet from coming to your country. As long as you can stop internet not reaching your country, then you have absolute sovereignty. Not only that, you must stop erosion from coming to your country. So if you cannot stop erosion to come to your border without visa, then you don't have absolute sovereignty. So no country, no nation and President Tinubu has said several times that he will want to ensure that Nigeria sovereignty remains at peace level and remain ultimately what it's supposed to be. That is one Nigeria, indivisible, and Nigeria as it is. And that's exactly what we are doing. But let me tell you, it is not enough to create local policies to run this agenda of one Nigeria, it's also important to say to the international community at multilateral engagement what they understand, what are their own, worries about the Nigeria state. Yeah. And some people believe, for example, that maybe Nigeria state cannot hold for a long time. You can see many predictions. But today, we are brothers to one another, and we will remain one. And that is the agenda of the sovereignty canvas by President Tinubu. Even when he was president of ECOWAS, he refused to take military action against Niger. They do forget. So obviously, for a realist, if he was a realist, he could have taken the action before even going to the General Assembly to ask for.
Well, all of us know the implication. Even the little thing that was done, we saw what happened.
What is the implication? You can overrun
the absence of the membership of. How easy do you think that diplomatically? You saw what those coup has happened in those countries. They pulled out of the regional
all those things. International diplomacy is quite completely different because some interests you don't even see playing openly. And they are brain behind the whole thing. Look at Russia and Ukraine. Is it Russia alone that is blind Ukraine? And if it's Russia alone, they're so powerful and they have the money, is it Ukraine alone that is reacting to Russia? When I was in IMF World Bank last year, I questioned the World Bank MD. How do you come there to tell us that you spent $50 billion to support Ukraine? And I was wondering, must a country go into war before you get the support of the World Bank? And he changed his statement. He said, no, they were donors. The World Bank was just managing the $50 billion. But the truth of the matter is that $50 billion went to Ukraine. And must you get these respite when you are in the war front? Must you go to war before you can access this kind of...
Senator, what I disagree about, and which you hold very firmly, is the agenda, economic agenda of President Bola Tinubu. And my strong... position about it is how a lot of Nigerians feel about it. And you are of the opinion that we are in the right trajectory and the economic agenda of this government is going to work. Nigerians are hoping, and it's been 3 years now that the hopes have been kept alive. But it looks like that hope is dwindling and is getting out, is blinking out. The question is that, what do you tell as an advocate of the Bola Tinubu economic...
Well, let me be honest with you.
When things are not working for the average
let me explain this to you. Nigeria is a member of geocentric system. True of us. You cannot take yourself away from that. If there's a war in Iran, no matter how good your economy is, it's a function of energy being affected. It triggers many things and change the data. So you are not the one fighting Iran. You don't even know how long the Iran war will be.
But the metrics of the Nigerian economy are not mostly triggered by
when there was a war, when Russia went to Ukraine, nothing happened to the price of oil. Because none of them are oil-producing countries. But when Israel went to Iran with US, then that is the domain of oil. And Iran have come to say now that the regional oil pipeline will be blown up any moment from now. So what do you make of that? So, and again, let me also say this, and very correctively. Nigeria is a member of OPEC because I hear you say all the time, we're oil-producing country, we produce oil, why should we be selling oil? You're a member of OPEC. The moment you sign OPEC treaty, you must comply with the rules and regulations as to how much you can sell a day of your oil and how much you can produce a day. If you produce 10 billion, this 2.1 you are allowed to take to the market, and 300,000 barrels per day for domestic consumption. Now coming to the Bola Tinubu economic thing you are disagreeing with. I work on data. Even Tinubu is not there after his 8 years, I will still talk on data. Buhari printed 30 trillion naira. So you want Tinubu to do magic to replace that 30 trillion naira.
Buhari of APC.
Of APC, yes.
Which you belong to.
Of course, of APC.
Is that not a failure of your party?
Well, if you look at party aggregates, and you are looking at individual government, you didn't have no question about the performance of APC.
I thought government is a
I'm just giving you a cautionary
statement. And Bola Tinubu said he's going to continue on what Buhari said.
If you printed 30 trillion naira, it means you lent yourself
under your party's watch.
30 trillion
under your
naira.
Party's watch.
So that's a problem. Two, when Bola Tinubu came in, and I said this to him when he came in, sir, let us publish the data that we are inheriting. But people say that because we are in the same political party, it's cause some distraction. Bola Tinubu meant 0.5% cash to GDP. You want to buy Unibank or First Bank, right? The asset is 1 billion naira. But the cash at hand is 50 million. She want to withdraw 100 million in Onitsha. Jimo want to withdraw 100 million of his own money in Lagos. Now, the total money at hand is 50 million. Where is the asset to sell? First Bank or Kukule said the asset, you have to be depositors fund. Now, in the country like Nigeria, where you have 0.5% cash to GDP, what magic do you want to perform? You pay salary, you pay consolidated fund, you will service debt, all within 0.5. And lastly, don't forget also that debt to GDP ratio was 96%. You made first class. You understand what I'm talking about? So you know figures are important. So if that means that when you have 100 naira income, you use 96 naira to pay debt. So the remaining 4 naira. That's what Buhari left us. So when you have all these metrics, it takes time for the government to settle down. Now, what is Tinubu thinking about as I talk to you this evening? He's thinking about the fact that, okay, with the rising price of domestic fuel, and then, of course, the crude oil price is going, he needs to distill many palliatives to solve macroeconomic problems that may arise from Iran and Israel and United States. But these are not things you can do in one day. And don't forget, Nigeria don't even have data bank where you can get these figures out very quickly and be able to know how to make projection. Because accounting is historical. Data is futuristic. If I have data, I can project, I can plan, I can show what I want to do. But if it's about accounting, it's about what have been spent, who stole what, who didn't carry what, and EFCC pursued that. What EFCC can pursue is spent money, not projected money.
But I agree with the foundational indices that you have laid, which is a mess of an economy that Bola Tinubu met on the ground. Yeah. But where you have refused to go into is the immediate policy President Bola Tinubu made when he got into office, and it escalated in less than 48 hours he got into office without a strategy. And that's what experts and critics are saying. That yes, you may agree that these are some of the decisions that world economists are saying that we should have taken, but were there plans to have taken, and President Tinubu has been blamed of plunging Nigeria into this economic crisis because there were no laid out and properly designed strategy in mitigating the impact of those decisions. He made those three major decisions, and Nigerian economy became a mess.
Now, what is strategy? Let us just take it from the elementary level.
Let's take it for the first one. The removal of oil subsidy.
They're all strategy now.
I'm saying let's take it one after the other. For example, strategy in removing oil subsidy.
For example, if you leave the oil subsidy to be there, with 0.5% cash to GDP, 96 debt financing, and you still want to go ahead with $77 billion low debt, and you want to go ahead and keep subsidy, economy was already a dangerous zone.
Well, don't you think it needs cushioning?
You have to cushion with what? That is when I came here. That is when I came here last time. I remember, and I said, borrow money and do a bridge finance to take away $77 billion away, borrow 100, and then get a distance of 50. So you get $20 billion distance. You pay off 50 with 77, then you borrow 100, you have 50. Then your dollar stabilizes and it goes on. You lambasted me here, and so a few days after, our Minister of Finance, Minister of Economy, came out to say, oh, we will finance domestically. But eventually, what happened? We started borrowing because we have to borrow. The lending market will disappear. And if it disappears, you are doomed. It means you have to borrow yourself. Borrowing yourself means ways and means.
And you are in the National Assembly, you saw how disastrous our management of federal budget has been.
What
is that the kind of economy that brings any kind of confidence?
Look, I am even a member of appropriation. What is disastrous about
the implementation level?
What implementation of what?
And even the disbursements of money. MDAs are complaining about...
What you can say here is capital project versus the current expenditure. The current is funded 100%. Capital project couldn't get a face in the last year budget. Then we had a consolidated budget to say whatever income we make in month 1, 2, 3 of 2026 will be used to fund capital project. 30% environment have been released, to start capital project of 2025. But this foreign expenditure was 100%, fixed. The only thing what Tinubu can probably do is maybe he can manage some little level of waste, in time of looking at the strategy, the structure. Even if you have a strategy to do that, the structure will not allow him to do it. Because the structure is a big problem. Strategy is financing, a course of action. Allocation of resources to finance a course of action. A course of action is our New Hope agenda. Anything we do, we put resources to fund it. The structure is not communicating with the strategy.
But the politically speaking, the average person
give me one.
In the rural community
I will come to the average
is saying that there's more burden and more poverty
I will come to the average person. Now, the structure, we inherited the structure. Bola Tinubu inherited that. And I don't think he can change the structure in the way and manner he probably contemplated before he came to office that he wants to change the structure. That's not possible. The system is not there. Imagine every civil servant getting a computer to communicate with the server today. Look at the cost in capital project. It's more than 40% of our recurrent expenditure. How do you fund that? If they don't have a computer of their own, how do they communicate? As of today, President Bola Tinubu is working on harmonized email. He wants every civil servant to have an email, .gov. So that when you are running corruption, we pass a law. You must transact everything you are doing as a public servant through your government official email. If you don't do so, you go to 7 years imprisonment. So if the government email is working, if you is looking for who stole money, they go to your email through the server. They will see the communication. Now, these are reforms that are coming. I'm sorry to throw them out of the bag. They are coming. You will see them very soon, whereby everybody have this harmonized system, and then we can now reduce. Because reduction of corruption, like EFC's chairman said, is systemic. It has to be academically and data-driven and recharge for fun. You had an interview with him, which I watched on the television. And this is, if you don't do that, it cannot be by attack, drastic deployment of people. Who are you deploying? The issue is that crime has gone systemic. So if you have to go systemic, you have to go with the criminal, with systemic. So if we say to a public servant, if you write any memo or send any memo that is not going through government server, you go to 7 years imprisonment. You already know you won't do that. And whatever you put on your own email, we'll be able to get it. Look at the prince that was arrested in Britain last time for corruption. They got it through the email. If America is tracing crime, through the email. So coming to the poor people you are talking about. In every economy, we have this set of people. And we have sympathy for them because obviously they are part of the system and they must have their own right, to enjoyment, to basic things of life. And I think every government is doing that. In Kenya, 34% of the youth are completely helpless. In America, 7.6% of youth have nothing to eat. You even said see them in public centers. But in Nigeria, we are blessed with the fact the government have an idea of giving palliative empowerment to ensure that we reduce poverty. We cannot absolutely reduce 100% in one day. No, it's not possible. But to say that government does not have face that is addressing this important problem and distilling fundamental structures and strategy to ensure that they engage is
Give me a moment, Senator. We need to go on a break, but when we come back, how can the government of the day manage the impactful situation of global rise in oil prices and what we are experiencing in Nigeria, the undulating pricing model that is going on? We'll be right back. Inflation, price of commodity, price of food and transportation is highly impacted. We'll be back with the United Nations Permanent Representative Designate, Senator Jim O'Brien. After this break, everyone.
My son
is United Nations Permanent Representative Designate, and we understand now that it's just a matter of time. It will be getting a letter of credence if the information that we have as to the fact that the United Nations' return is later, expecting his date of arrival. And other congratulations in that regard. But Senator, it means that any moment from now, your seat will be vacant in the Senate.
Yes.
And you must be preparing for your resumption and exit from here and resumption in New York.
Absolutely. Once the president sends me, I'll go my way.
But I mean, the big question to ask here is that, do you think you really have served the people of your senatorial district?
Oh, absolutely. And it's an incredible time. I work so hard for them. Almost.
Other than traveling across the globe?
Yeah, because anything I have,
can you lay?
Yeah, anything I have, I give them. For example, it's not, you don't have to wait for government to give you money alone. For example, I could tell you on and on. In terms of bills, I passed the bitumen development bill for the first time in Nigeria since 1960. We now have a bitumen act. Because 30% of 300,000 kilometer roads. They're bad. Only 30% we're able to do. We still have the remaining 70% not touched. So 270,000 kilometer roads are not touched. And here we have bitumen. You know, those days we have $87 billion bitumen sitting there by World Bank data. So we're able to pass the law. And Bola Tinubu have signed that. So obviously that law will help, you know, to create alternative to petroleum, because the number of volume of petroleum we have is almost equivalent to the number of petroleum that we have, and that's a big deal for those.
Is it exportable?
Yeah, of course. They're going to export. They will go to sell. You do local one, then you do exploration, and I simplify it. You can even lease the whole territory to international organizations that are noted for bitumen, and then begins to have your royalty and all that. Now, beyond that, I was able to do the Federal Medical Center bill in the Bodako. We put 700 million naira of the 2 billion budget for.
That's your own village.
Yeah, we put that money in Akinfo roads, you know, to be done. You know, they have to grade it and put it down. Now, the whole my central district, we don't have jam center, so they used to go to Ondo to do jam, and you can imagine some people die on the road to leave the waterland area and move to Okitiupa, take a vehicle to Ore to Ondo. So we're able to put 600 million naira from the 2 billion naira into build and equipped jam center. We have hospital center that was also built. We have 66 borehole with 6 pumps, you know, solar powered to the villager. Because when I was in school in those days, we used to go and fetch water from the rivers. So we don't do that in those areas now. It's reduced minimally. So we have so many things that are put. And in this year budget, I also reiterated the importance of traditional rulers. They should put about 50 million to do the palaces, you know, because they are very important. You can't enter the palace of the Kabezi and things are just not right. So I put some of the allocation given to me to affect the.
Enough of talking about it, because if not, I'm going to send an invoice to you and your senatorial office for that. But it will be a very good opportunity for the people of your senatorial district to know what Jimoh Ibrahim has done as a senator. But let me draw from your war studies experience. The escalation in the Middle East, and I'm worried, could this be another kind of Gulf war, another kind of world war? If that is happening, you saw, and I believe that those mines that are going off in the Strait of Hormuz were not planted only when the war started. I know that Iran may have planned this ahead of time. But the major issue as it affects Nigeria is the prices. And we saw what has happened. The world has come together to say, let's release some of the deposit that we have. But what advantage can Nigeria take? We do not take an absolute advantage from the war in Ukraine and Russia. How can we take advantage of what is happening in the Middle East at the moment?
The person that was there, okay, now let me come to the first one. Let me allay your fear about world war. That will not happen. There's nothing like World War. Even the First World War, historians doubt it. That the killing of a referendum doesn't mean that the whole world was engaged in war. And I think I challenged this at United Nations last time. And I told Britain to correct their records. That there was nothing called First World War. There was European crisis, in fact, insurgency. There has never been a place where the whole world meets and say, let's launch war. Apart from Kenya and some other places in the East Africa that were part of the First World War, there was no any other country that were part of it. So forget about World War. The only war that we had was the Second World War, which was supposed to be First World War. So I didn't think there was a First World War. Now coming to what is happening in Israel, US, and Iran, that cannot lead to World War. Don't forget what I said earlier. I said the insurgency was so bullish enough to travel across multilateral jurisdictions before it can aggregate to become war. But when it starts, when missiles are throwing like this up and down, you are scared that, oh, world war is coming, the world is coming to an end. This has been predicted several times, but it never happened. So there is no any world war. It will not lead to world war. Coming to your second question about the impact of this in Nigeria. Nigeria stand to gain a lot in the sense that the price of oil has got to 100 and it will go above 100. I can tell you that. It means that you make more money, isn't it? Now, domestically, because we've removed subsidy on oil and we try to put oil at national stage or the banner. So obviously, domestically, you expect that macroeconomic will be affected in time of prices, for example, cost of flight from Lagos to Abuja might go up because there's a function of fuel. And that is why I said the other time that Nigeria is a member of the geocentric system and it cannot distill itself from there. So the whole idea about what the government is currently thinking is how to roll out massive palliative to cushion the effect of whatever it can happen. And they have capacity to do that because they got money excessively from what is coming from the crude oil. Now you talk about Ukraine and Russia. That is not the same. It didn't really affect the price of oil, that war, because, again, that war was between Ukraine and Russia, and it didn't travel much.
No, I was not talking about oil in specific. Yeah. I was saying that what I mentioned was how it affects Nigeria in terms of grains, in terms of energy.
That's what I've told you.
Yeah, we should have benefited from it because we are also producers.
And that's exactly what I've told you.
Should have benefited.
That you will have more money. That's one thing. So it will reduce borrowing. The price of dollar will come down, even though it has a phase of going up at the initial stage. But when you sell more oil and you sell at high prices, you get more volume of dollar, and then you can fight the market increase in the price of dollar because you have more volume of dollar. You can now central bank can throw more money into the black market and bring the rate down and can make dollar available. So once that happens, the macroeconomic effects will come down. Because as long as there's price stability and sustainable economy arising from injection that is coming from cash, and cash not borrowed, obviously you can be sure. In fact, right now, I think revenue to debt radio servicing is 68%. Kudos to Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I say it again. Because before he came, 96% GDP to revenue ratio debt management. Meaning that for every 100 naira, 96 naira must go to service debt. But now it's 68 naira. So you save as much as about 42 or whatever, 38 naira, in your pocket. But with the more money coming now, with the price of oil almost double the price now, you have more dollar. So if you have more dollar, you take the dollar to fight the likelihood of dollar price increase that affects macroeconomic system. And so I don't think there will be much problem.
Senator Jimoh Ibrahim, thank you so much, and congratulations once again. We've armed you. The nation has prepared you. Senator Jimoh Ibrahim, the nation has prepared you enough for the war ahead. We're sending you right into New York to go around fight for the interests of Nigeria, and I hope and I wish you the very best.
We will come back with good news.
Amen.
Of the Security Council, I can tell you that.
I wish you well. Thank you so much indeed. That's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching, everyone. I'm Sean Akimale. God bless Nigeria.